Hello everyone in the Self-Sewn Wardrobe group. This is a little test to see how we want to do live video in the group. It's definitely on my list. But I'm going to hand the camera over to Becca and I'm going to answer a question that Noah, or kind of answer a question that's come up in a topic that Noah brought up about overcasting and flat filling seams, etc., etc. So Noah is altering men's shirts to fit his body, and he's got little wider hips. So he was talking about buying a shirt that fits in the hips but that is a little too big up at the shoulders, and those seams up at the shoulders on those menswear shirts are flat felled. So we were all talking about our horror stories of trying to duplicate flat felled seams on ready-to-wear garments, and we discussed overcasting a seam and like faking the flat felled seam by sewing the seam, overcasting the seam allowance, or serging the seam allowance, and then top stitching that seam. So when you use a serger, it's going to go really nice and cleanly. Noah said that he'd been using the overcasting function on the sewing machine, but then ZD brought up, like, because she's so smart, the fact that you want to make sure to use a foot that is for overcasting when you are trying to overcast fabric on your sewing machine. Otherwise, you'll get tunneling. So I've got the overcasting foot right here, and Becca, you want to zoom in? And do you notice how the overcasting foot has a little pin in it? And actually for the baby locks, it's foot G, okay? So this pin helps to support the edge of our fabric. I have a really thin rayon fabric here. This is super duper lightweight, and if I tried to just zigzag over the edge of it on my sewing machine, it would definitely like tunnel down into the feed dogs and be terrible. So what I'm doing is I'm going to use this foot and pair it with the appropriate stitch on my sewing machine. Some machines will tell you just to use a zigzag, and then some machines, like this one, and it is kind of a fancy guy here, the Unity, they'll have stitches you can choose, and then they'll also suggest a presser foot. So up here you can see it says that I should be using presser foot G. All of this information should be in your owner's manual though. Every sewing machine should come with an owner's manual that has directions for how to overcast fabric, because this is what you do to ensure that fabric doesn't fray. So, oh, I missed it on the first try. There we go. So I've put the foot on the sewing machine, and then I'm gonna put my fabric under the foot, and look at where I line up my fabric. It's right here along this guide. And I'm using the overcasting stitch, but like I said, sometimes they'll just recommend to use a zigzag. So I'm gonna start sewing, and I'm gonna let it stitch for a little bit and then discuss how the stitch works. So I'm looking right here. I am not looking at my needle as I sew. I'm just looking right at this fuzzy raw edge, which of course it's nice to have a serger to cut that stuff off, but if you don't have one, this is your alternative, and it's really great to be using this foot. So I'm gonna keep sewing. Notice this stitch, the needle goes back and forth, and then it's gonna hop over to the right, eventually. There we go, hopping over to the right, and it's just clearing that little finger that's in the middle of the foot and then coming back over. So that finger on the foot is supporting the stitch. I'm going to cut this and take this out, discuss it a little bit again. Okay, so here we are. There's an overcast edge. Get a little better lighting. So what this does, it's going to prevent my fabric from fraying, and something that ZD repeated several times in our little discussion is that a serger will give you a cleaner look, and that's for sure. And yes, Mom, I did tear the edge, ZD asked, and so a torn edge is not going to look as clean as a cut edge for sure, but I did this pretty quickly. So what that stitch finger does on the foot, and I'm going to try to turn this a little better, is it supports the stitch as it goes along the edge of the fabric. Make sure to use the proper stitch that is recommended for this foot, because if you use the wrong stitch, your needle can hit that little metal finger that extends into your stitch area. Do you guys see that? So make sure that you don't, forget that this foot is on your machine, or that you don't choose the wrong stitch. This is one reason why we kind of like the electronic machines, because they have a few fail-safes that can help out. And yeah, Mom, I'm really sorry I tore it. But I just tore this off the bolt to show. So Noah, you'd get an even cleaner look on your cut pattern piece, and then you'd get an even cleaner look on the serger. So if you've got access to a serger, just go for it. And you know us, we are serger snobs, fully admit to that. And are there any questions, Becca, or just like Mom tell me to cut the fabric?
It's just ZD mad at you.
It's just ZD mad at me. I'm sorry, Mom. Okay, well, we will be doing more of these live videos. Sorry there wasn't more warning in advance, but next time I'll try to tell you when we're going to be going live.